Hello everybody, Andrew from Cultaholic Wrestling here, and my goodness gracious me, if it isn't already once again the most annual time of the year for the virtual graps as WWE 2K25 swiftly approaches its March 14th release date. Once again, we here at Cultaholic were incredibly lucky to be invited down to Take-Two's offices in London to go hands-on with the game for a few hours, having the chance to try some of the new features on offer as well as getting to check out this year's new showcase mode dedicated to one of the most iconic families in all of wrestling history, aptly named the Bloodline Dynasty. Now, before we get into it, however, of course, I think it's worth mentioning that what we got to play at this preview event was only just a small taste of what 2K25 will ultimately include at launch, meaning that unfortunately the new island mode wasn't available to us here. However, without further ado, let's just jump straight into it and talk about the gameplay. Of course, one of, if not the most important aspect of any wrestling video game. Well, if you've been a fan of the gameplay since the 2K series returned from its brief hiatus with 2K22, then you're in luck, my friend, because fundamentally, the core gameplay you've grown accustomed to remains relatively untouched. Your grapples, your strikes, your combos, reversals, signatures, finishes, and super finishes are all mapped in exactly the same way. However, the dodge button, right? That dodge button, the one originally mapped to the right shoulder button where it's sort of like strafe you out of the way if an opponent is trying to attack you, it's now instead mapped to the same button used to execute your reversals, keeping all your evasive tactics in one place rather than like having to remember yet another button that you may never end up using. However, it's actually pretty good because it can save you from an errant strike or an RKO out of nowhere. My goodness, use the dodge button, everybody, okay? I know this might sound like quite an inane change to some of you watching. However, as I left the preview and thought about it a little bit more, it kind of dawned on me that it's the little things like this, small, streamlined quality of life changes that really make a difference in the overall gameplay experience. And it wasn't just in a simple button change either. Now, in the prior 2 years of covering these previews, I feel as though I often mention a very similar thing. When it comes to the core gameplay, it truly feels as though 2K and Visual Concepts have found what works. They had a solid foundation with 2K22, and with each release, they've continued to iterate on top of that rather than drastically change the formula year to year. That's not to say that it always works out for the best though, and that there aren't certain things I'd definitely like to see changed in future installments. For example, more commentary options would be nice, better crowd noise, perhaps even just in general, better crowd models. A nice revamped crowd would be cool, amongst some other things as well. But the one thing I always truly enjoy is how it feels to lock up in the ring. Not only that, but each year it also seems like 2K and Visual Concepts are focusing more on simplicity in their gameplay. What can they do to ensure that we have an enjoyable, immersive experience that's not hampered by clunky systems and frustrating mechanics? Well, WWE 2K25 adds a few small and returning, albeit very welcome changes that help in achieving just that. Amongst the first of these small quality of life changes that caught my 4 eyes when jumping into the game related to that of the wrestler hoods. Now displayed between your chosen superstar's health and momentum bars, you'll find a new, unintrusive yellow bar that pertains to your stamina. Whilst the days of getting all your moves off at breakneck speed only for your character to buckle at the last moment as you hoist up your opponent into a powerbomb carry might not be entirely over just yet, having that visual aid displayed at all times really helps with maintaining and managing your stamina to suit your playstyle and match pace. Another thing I actually noticed in relation to the HUD was the inclusion of this little circular timer that appears next to your body damage whenever you get drops with a move. This timer indicates how long you or your opponent will remain down for. For example, if you're playing as a wrestler that perhaps has a finishing move that can be performed from the top rope, rather than climbing the turnbuckle only for your opponent to then rise infuriatingly to their feet at the last second, scuppering your high-rent district plans, you can now physically gauge when the optimal time is to try and hit that maneuver. Granted, they don't just reverse it anyway, just to spite you, bastards. Again, it's an incredibly small addition, but one that helps you plan and strategize your matches a little bit better. As we're talking about the hoods, I'll just quickly mention the overall UI presentation as well. It looks a lot nicer in my opinion. Both the pinning system and the turn-based minigame in which you trade blows, they feel a lot smoother and a lot more responsive too. There's of course been issues in the past games that I've also experienced as well firsthand, where maybe you go for a pin, you kick out, but clearly you're in the green! You're in the green, god damn it, but the game doesn't register it, and vice versa. But again, during my time with the game here, those systems definitely felt much more finely tuned. And staying on topic with certain systems making a comeback, let's talk about the return of chain wrestling, a mechanic that was last seen in 2K19 and praised by many fans for its immersive feel that really replicated the technical nuance you see play out on TV. It has changed a little bit with a few new caveats, so let's just quickly run through those. When beginning a match, there's two ways to initiate the chain wrestling sequence. The first is if you're against a superstar that has the chain wrestling buff, they'll rebuttal your grapple attempt and instead defend themselves by initiating the chain wrestling mechanic. The second, it can also occur when two grapples are performed at the same time. Easy. Once you're locked in, both you and your opponent will choose between a few actions, those being wrench to inflict damage, switch to gain control in a new hold, or either attack or drive to end the chain wrestling sequence. The segments inside the circle in which you'll choose your approach also indicate which actions will have a greater advantage in the minigame. Once you and your opponent have picked the action you desire, much like in 2K19, you use the left stick to find that hidden hotspot to fill the meter and perform the action you've selected. This time, however, the superstar in control of that first hold can interrupt their opponent's progress by performing a strike if they look like they're about to get the upper hand on you. I actually only managed to initiate it once in my preview, but when I did it, it felt a lot fairer and much more fluid than the rock, paper, scissors system that 2K19's chain wrestling was based upon. However, that's not the only system to make a comeback, mind you, as the submission wheel, yay, also makes its long-awaited triumphant return. I mean, that's perhaps for some, because I know there's an audience out there that actually prefer the button mashing minigame, but for those who don't, yes, the wheel is back and works exactly as it did before. However, this time, rather than struggling to make out which of the two colours you are, the wheel now displays colour-coded names to alleviate any confusion. Again, it's these small quality of life changes that really help keep the frustration at bay and allow you to immerse yourself in the wrestling itself. Again, much like that of the chain wrestling, I find this way fairer than the agonising button mashing from the last few titles. You actually feel like you have more of a chance to mount a comeback against an opponent if you find yourself particularly damaged. As you probably noticed from the chain wrestling footage I've included, I'd be remiss not to talk about all these returning features without of course mentioning one of the bigger changes 2K25 has decided to implement in this year's installment: intergender wrestling, everyone. For the first time since, I believe, SmackDown vs. Raw 2009, you can pit members of the men's and women's division against one another to create countless matchups across all game modes. Finally, you can have that long-awaited match many of us have been waiting to have between Rhea and Dom. Why not have Jade Cargill obliterate Ethan Page through a table backstage for the fun of it? Haha! Here, just have some more Solo Sikoa and Lyra Valkyria. The possibilities are truly endless, especially considering 2K have announced that they'll be a roster of over 300 playable characters. And with 2K24 last year veering into gameplay and presentation territories that had me reminiscing about the SmackDown games of yesteryear, this is yet another step in that direction. And oh yeah, also before I forget, the female superstars can now bleed, you sickos. Visual concepts in 2K seem to be giving us a blend of both worlds, marrying the simulation immersion based gameplay along with the more old school arcadey fun that endeared us to these games in the first place, allowing us to tweak settings, disable or enable systems, and able to craft the types of experiences that we as fans are looking for. That arcadey fun is especially present in the new backstage areas WWE 2K25 allows players to brawl within. Not only do we have the backstage arena we've seen in the previous titles, but now that's expanded to such places as the infamous and dangerous NXT parking lot. It's very dangerous, don't you know, dear viewer? And my personal favourite, the secret WWE warehouse. Now, whilst granted I did wish that the NXT parking lot had a little more interactivity and danger, the treasure trove that's the WWE warehouse truly didn't disappoint. Adorned with Easter eggs such as Jimmy Hart's megaphone, Triple H's throne, an old school WrestleMania ring with no ropes that you can interact with, and touchingly Bray Wyatt's rocking chair, This felt like something ripped straight out of an old SmackDown game and had me grinning ear to ear. Not to mention the fact you can throw your opponents into the shells dotted around said arena, making them implode whilst wonderful steel plunder falls for you to pick up and use. Oh, it's delightful. It's great fun and genuinely is an addition that keeps things feeling fresh and engaging. Now let's move on to this year's showcase mode that celebrates the accomplishments and history of the extended Anoa'i family, titled the Bloodline Dynasty. This year, players get the chance to relive, change, or create moments from the legacy of the Bloodline. In the preview session, we got to relive and take control of Nia Jax as we guide her to winning the Queen of the Ring tournament in 2024 against Lyra Valkyria. We got to change history by having Roman decisively beat Seth Rollins in their Universal title match at the Royal Rumble 2022, and we also got to participate in a dream match scenario as Afa and Sika of the Wild Samoans took it to the Dudley Boys in a tables match. It was bloody lovely. Wonderfully narrated by Paul Heyman, the wise man fills us in with important context and history surrounding the matches and the members of the family we're about to play as. As for the gameplay itself, players will find that the familiar objective-based tasks remain, thankfully still showing the button commands on screen for the specific maneuvers the game is asking you to accomplish, whilst also continuing to reward you with extra content such as skins and arenas upon completing them. However, there's now the addition of timed objectives to add some pressure and challenge to the proceedings. Can you do it in time? I didn't. Boo. This year, the slingshot technology that transitions between real-life footage and gameplay has also been ditched in favour of just in-game cutscenes instead. I actually found this to be less jarring this time around, as there would still be commentary throughout these moments and no noticeable lengths of awkward silences found in some of the previous year's showcase modes. I did, however, feel like some of the cutscenes, especially in the Nia and Lyra match, actually lasted a bit too long, and it took me away from the gameplay and just left me wanting to just jump back straight into the action. In the other matches, however, that we did get to play, the gameplay to cutscene ratio felt far more well balanced, so it'll be interesting to see how the presentation fares upon its full release. With presentation in mind, what's the presentation like overall? Well, textures, models, facial scans on the superstars themselves look fantastic, at least on the ones we were able to play as and view in the preview. The lighting really helps enhance and pop the colours of the attires and arenas, plus the fact you now have options to control the camera during superstars' entrances is genuinely extremely fun, especially if you want to try and recreate that lovely 8K cam look as they come waltzing down towards the ring. What was that? I don't know. You can even walk along and dive from the barricade now, granted with limited movesets. Sorry there was no finishers from what I saw in my preview, but 2K and Visual Concepts have once again done a fantastic job in recreating the WWE TV products within a video game format. It might not necessarily be perfect, and there's certainly areas that could be improved in future installments, but at its very core, WWE 2K25 is a great wrestling game that gives us players a plethora of options to sink our teeth into in regards of the type of experiences we want to tailor for ourselves. Whether that's embracing the silliness, wanting to immerse ourselves more in the simulation-based mechanics, or even just finding a sweet spot between the two. Of course, we've yet to see much more of what WWE 2K25 has to offer. I'm certainly trepidatious about the island, given that it seems as though this will be WWE 2K's version of NBA 2K's The City, a mode that has been widely criticised by the fanbase in the past just due to its inclusion of what many describe as a lot of busy work. It just gets in the way of players actually wanting to play the game. We haven't seen much of this mode yet, so I'll reserve judgment for now. It might actually be packed with loads of great stuff that us wrestling fans really enjoy. I just hope it doesn't come at the detriment of other modes and areas that fans have been clamouring to see improvements on. We truly love you, Universe Mode. We'll never give up hope. Come on! All that aside, I had a blast, as always, and really enjoyed my time with the game, but those are just a few of my thoughts and impressions on a small smidge of what 2K25 has to offer. Let me know down in the comments below whether you're excited for its release. Until next time, I've been Andrew from Cultaholic Wrestling, and it's been a pleasure. Toodles!